Okay, today we're going to be reading a section in our social studies textbook, The Massachusetts Story, about the Wampanoag Native people. So I'd like you to turn to page 48. You're also going to be responsible for answering some questions about this text. So I would like to preview some of those with you. In the first section, you're going to be responsible for drawing a line to match the vocabulary word with its definition. The words we have here are legend, longhouse, native, preserve, tribe, and we too. Then you'll be responsible for answering the following questions. What does the name Wampanoag mean? You'll find that on page 48. Where did the Wampanoag live in the spring and summer? You'll find that on page 52. What did the Native Americans call their most important crop? You'll find that on page 53. What did the Native women put in the soil to make it richer? You'll find that on page 53. Name one thing the Native people did to preserve food. You'll find that on page 54. What are the young trees that bend, which were used in making weetus, called? You'll find that on page 54. Where did the Wampanoag spend their winters? You'll find that on page 56. Where did the Wampanoag store their food in the winter? You'll also find that on page 56. Name two animals that the Wampanoag men hunt for meat. You'll find that on page 57. And finally, according to legend, how were Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard formed? You'll find that on page 58. And beneath you find a little clue into what the answer to that question is. Now getting into the text, I'd like you to focus on page 48. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit for you. When reading a textbook, we want to make sure that we read all the parts. So we're going to start over here with the key ideas. These are the most important ideas that you're going to learn through this chapter. First, Native Americans lived in the land we call Massachusetts for thousands of years. The Wampanoag were one of several tribes who lived here in the 1600s. The Wampanoag lived life according to the seasons. Beneath that, you'll see key terms. These are the vocabulary words that they have determined are the most important for you to understand what you're reading. They're the same words that appear on your question sheet. Again, they are legend, longhouse, native, preserve, tribe, and we too. And you'll find that they're highlighted as we read. Now I'm going to start reading right here. Close your eyes for a minute. Go back in time. Go back hundreds of years before any settlers came across the ocean to Massachusetts. There were no cars or highways. There were no airplanes flying in the sky. There were no stores or office buildings. All around you are forests of oak, maple, and pine trees. You can smell the ocean close by. What sounds do you hear? You might see a line of smoke rising from the trees. If you follow the smoke, you might find people cooking food over a fire. The people are dressed in soft deer skins and animal furs. Who are they? They call themselves the Wampanoag. That means people of the first light or people of the dawn. Now that is the first answer to our first question. Now I have gone back and I have restated the question for you, and I'd like you to copy down what I've written. The name Wampanoag means. And then you're going to go back to this section right here and you're going to explain what the name means. This would be a good time for you to pause the video and write down your answer. Now that you're done, I would like to explore other parts of this page. For example, I see a caption right here. It says, by the early 1600s, there were about 67 villages on the Wampanoag land. Paths led from village to village. In this picture, what examples can you find of how the people used the forests and ocean? And I'm going to let you look at the picture for a moment as you think about the answer to that question. And now I'd like you to turn the page to page 50. We're starting up here with the title, The Wampanoag. In the early 1600s, several tribes were living in the land we call Massachusetts. A tribe is a community of families or groups of related families. Now, I would like to look back at our vocabulary words and see if we can make a match for the word tribe, because tribe was a highlighted word. It appears right here, the word tribe, and here are our options. Born in a place or coming naturally from a place. A Wampanoag summer home made from wood, bark, and grasses. A story that explains how something came to be. A community of families or groups of related families. To prepare food so it will last a long time without spoiling. A long home made of saplings and bark to hold an extended family. Now, which one of those meanings did I just read when I read the word tribe? If you can't remember, rewind the video a little bit and see if you can figure it out. The tribes had different names and lived in different parts of Massachusetts. However, they had some important things in common. They spoke languages that had a common source called Algonquin. They hunted, fished, and gathered wild berries and plants. They were farmers who grew maize, which is corn, beans, and squash to eat. They made clothing from animal skins and used tools made from stones, shells, and bone. To build homes, they used materials they found around them. The Wampanoag tribe was one of these tribes. We will focus on their way of life in this chapter. Other tribes may have done things a bit differently. Now, if we look over here in this gray box, we are asked the question, what's in a name? Today, people often call the Wampanoag and other tribes American Indians or Native Americans. Native means born in a place or coming naturally from a place. Native Americans have lived here for thousands of years. Now again, we have a bolded word, the word native. So I'd like to return to our vocabulary words. The word native is right here. Did that text say it meant born in a place or coming naturally from a place? A Wampanoag summer home made from wood, bark, and grasses. A story that explains how something came to be. A community of families or groups of related families. To prepare food so it will last a long time without spoiling. A long home made of saplings and bark to hold an extended family. If you can't remember, rewind the video a little bit and see if you can find the answer. Now down here we see a map of the Native American tribes in 1620. Now if we look, Massachusetts is outlined in white right here, and we can see all the different tribes that existed in Massachusetts in the 1600s. The Mohegans were up here, Pocumtuck, Nipmuc, and Wampanoag, which took up a large part of Cape Cod. Beneath it, it says the tribes in Massachusetts were part of a larger nation that spoke the Algonquin language. Algonquin-speaking people lived across the eastern woodlands of North America. Find the Wampanoag lands on the map. What other tribes lived in Massachusetts in the 1600s? Which tribe lived closest to where you live today? And that's something that you can think about. Now we're on page 51. And I'm going to start right here with the title, Living with the Seasons. The Wampanoag people got everything they needed from nature. There was soil for planting crops. The forests gave them animals to hunt and wood for building. Clear rivers were full of fish and water birds. The rivers and ocean gave them water for fishing, drinking, cooking, washing, and traveling. Wild plants provided berries, nuts, and healing herbs. This did not mean that life was easy. The people had to work hard to make everything they needed. If you were a young Wampanoag boy or girl, your life followed the seasons. Let's read about some of the things that you would do in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. Now, if we look at this picture, beneath it, it said, Wampanoag life followed the seasons. The people lived according to what they found in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. Now, this box right here is entitled A Long History. It says, the Wampanoag believe they are related to the earliest people who lived here more than 10,000 years ago. We call these early groups prehistoric Indians. Prehistoric means before history was written down. How do we know about prehistoric people? We can learn about them from the stories the people passed down. We can also study artifacts they left behind. Archaeologists are scientists who study clues left behind by ancient people. They have found spear points in Boston that are 6,000 to 8,000 years old. Under Back Bay, they have found wooden stakes from fishing weirs. The stakes are 5,000 years old. A fishing weir is a trap made of sticks woven together. People set the trap across a river. That's interesting. This last section is asking you to think more deeply about what you've read. It says, think about our lives today. How do they change with the seasons? Do the foods we eat depend on the seasons? How is this different from or similar to the way the Native Americans lived? And you can pause the video and think about that if you'd like. And then we are going to move on to page 52. Page 52. Spring and Summer by the Sea. In the spring and summer, you live near the seashore. Now I'm going to stop for a minute because that is the answer to one of our questions. If you look at number 2, it asks, where did the Wampanoag live in the spring and summer? And I've restated that for you, and I'd like you to copy this down. In the spring and summer, they lived, and I'd like you to go back and I'd like you to answer the question. You can pause the video while you're doing that. If you don't remember where they lived, rewind and listen to me read it again. Your family has a planting ground there. It is important to live near water and good farmland. The year begins when the herring move up the river to lay their eggs. A herring is a small fish. Your family catches so many herring, how will you eat them all? You smoke the extra fish, so they will last a long time without spoiling. Your father catches fish and eels from the ocean and rivers. Your mother digs for clams and finds lobsters in the surf. Now, we're never going to forget to read our captions because they give us additional information. Up here, it says, part of learning is watching. You watch your father and uncles make eel traps like this one. You see how they trim the sticks to make them all the same size. Then they tie them together with reeds or other plants. Someday, you will have to make your own eel trap. Down here, we see an eel trap in action, and the caption says, these men are catching eels in a trap they made. Judging from the picture, how do you think the trap worked? And that's something that you can think about. Now we're on to page 53. And I'm going to start in this grayish box entitled The Three Sisters. Native Americans called their most important crops the Three Sisters. The Three Sisters were corn, beans, and squash. And I'm going to stop right there because that is the answer to our next question. Our next question asks, what did the Native Americans call their most important crop? I'd like you to copy down the restated answer. Their most important crop was called, and I'd like you to write down your answer. If you don't remember, you can rewind and you can hear me reread it. This is a good time to pause the video while you write down your answer. These crops grew together and helped each other in much the same way that family members might. In the spring, women and girls planted corn seeds in little mounds of earth. When the stalks were a few hands tall, they scattered beans and squash seeds around the base. As the bean plants grew taller, the corn stalks supported them. The bean plants had nitrogen, which kept the soil healthy. The large squash leaves spread out on the ground. They covered the soil and kept it moist in the hot weather. The squash also stopped weeds from getting to the other plants. The next section is called Planting Crops. The men get the land ready for planting. Your father and the other men cut down the trees. First, they put mud or clay part of the way up the trunks. Then they light a fire around the trunk. The fire cuts through the trunks, but stops at the mud. The men scrape away the ashes. Soon the trees fall to the ground. Later, the men will use the fallen trees to make boats or machoons. Once the land is clear, your mother plants corn, beans, and squash. Before she puts the seed in the ground, she puts some of the herring you caught into the soil. The fish will make the soil richer. Now we're going to pause for a minute because that's one of the answers to one of our questions. The question is, what did the Native women put in the soil to make it richer? Now I'm only asking you to write the words they put. Once you come up with your answer, you can follow it up with the words to make it richer. And that's how we will finish restating the question. If you can't remember what they put into the soil, you can rewind the video and hear me read it again. Now is a good time to pause the video while you're writing your answer down. Now that you're done, I'm going to read the caption to this picture. It says, older children helped guard the crops. They scared away birds that came to eat the corn. How do you think the people built this platform? And that's something that you can think about. And we will move forward. The next section we're going to read is called Gathering Wild Plants. Your mother finds nuts, roots, and berries to eat. She knows which herbs to gather for medicine. She collects grasses to weave into baskets and mats. The wild strawberries are ripe. You pick mounds of them. Your family celebrates with songs and dances. In early spring, you might stay near a sugar bush or an area with many maple trees. Native Americans knew how to collect maple sap. They boiled off the water until maple sugar was left. Then storing extra food. Your family preserves some of the food for the winter. To preserve means to prepare it so it will last a long time without spoiling. Now I noticed that this word is highlighted, which means it must be one of our vocabulary words. So we're going to go back and look. The word is preserve, and it's right here, number 4. Did we say that preserve meant born in a place or coming naturally from a place? A Wampanoag summer home made from wood, bark, and grasses? A story that explains how something came to be? A community of families or groups of related families? To prepare food so it will last a long time without spoiling? A long home made of saplings and bark to hold an extended family. Now would be a good time to pause the video while you draw a line from the word preserve to your answer. If you can't remember, rewind the video and hear me read it again. You smoke fish and meat to preserve them. You dry berries, fruits, and herbs. You might also leave root vegetables in the ground covered with a layer of hay. In the fall, you will dry some of the beans and corn you have grown. Now that is an answer to one of our questions. It asks, name one thing the native people did to preserve food. You're going to write down to preserve food, they. Now I just read 2 or 3 different ways that they preserved food, and you only need to write down one of them. If you can't remember, you can rewind the video and hear me read it again. Now's a good time to pause the video while you write down your answer. Now that you're done, we're going to go into the 3rd section of this page, which is called Building a Summer Home. In the summer, your family makes a home called a weetu. You used wood, bark, and grasses to build the weetu. Your father and the other men make the frame out of the young trees that bend. These are called saplings. Now I'm going to pause because there are 2 answers that we need to write down. The first is one of our vocabulary words because the word weetu, as you can see, is highlighted. Now, did a weetu mean born in a place or coming naturally from a place? A Wampanoag summer home made from wood, bark, and grasses? A story that explains how something came to be? A community of families or groups of related families? To prepare food so it will last a long time without spoiling? Or a long home made of saplings and bark to hold an extended family? Which one of those was weetu? If you can't remember, rewind the video and hear me read it again. Once you've answered that question, we need to answer question number 5, which asks, what are the young trees that bend, which were used in making weetus, called? Again, it was right in this paragraph that I just read. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video and write down your answer. And if you can't remember, you can rewind and hear me read it again. Follow the steps on the right to see how it's done. So over here, when we get to this page, these will be the steps to making a weetu. Spring is the only time to find saplings. Your family collects enough for the weetu, plus more to save for your winter home. Spring is also the time to peel bark from the trees. Your family uses some of the bark for the weetu and saves the rest to cover your winter home. Now this page is filled with information. So we're going to go over here and I'm going to read this little paragraph right below the cranberries. Cranberries grew in bogs and ponds. They were an important food. Native Americans said that cranberries were sent to them from the Great Spirit. He knew his people needed a good supply of food. He sent a dove carrying the first cranberries to the people. Beneath that, it says, William Wood, an Englishman who lived in Massachusetts around 1630, wrote about the Wampanoag homes he saw. He said Wetu's were warmer than our English houses and much drier. The woven mats on the roofs denied entrance to any drop of rain, though it comes